Welcome back to the Man Cave, everybody. I'm Kimmy B.
And Lenny.
This is episode 62 of the ManTFup podcast. Now, before we go any further, please remember to like, subscribe, share, and follow. We are absolutely everywhere. And this particular episode, I think we'll have a lot of you wanting to comment. So please make sure you're following us on social media as well, especially on TikTok and Instagram, where you can, of course, comment, and YouTube, the YouTube Shorts as well. So it's back to school season, Len, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know you have a couple kids getting ready, to head back to high school. And obviously, we have a lot of folks out here in the social media space that are in the same boat. And there's so many questions around education, whether it's curriculum, whether it's safety in schools. And something that a lot of people have been talking about here in Florida is cell phone use in schools. And one county, Orange County, has decided that all public school students will now be banned from using their cell phones from the first bell to the final period. That includes at lunchtime. Now, before we go any further, I'm going to clarify some things about this new, cell phone school ban. Your child can bring their phone to school with them. It will just have to be on silent and then put away in a bag of some sort, whether it's their backpack or their pocketbook. If you don't carry a bag, I'm not totally sure. They didn't address that. If it would have to be in a locker or if you would have to leave it with a teacher, at the beginning of class and then pick it up when you're leaving. But from the first bell to the final period of school, cell phones will no longer be allowed to be used in Orange County public schools here in the state of Florida. We had this conversation on the radio, and I was blown away by, once again, how divided people were on this subject line. The people who loved it. Finally, they shouldn't have them in school at all. It's about time. These things are the bane of our existence for many reasons. And then you had the people that were on the other side of the conversation that were like, absolutely not. There's too much, there's too many school shootings. The likelihood of there being an emergency is just too high. They need to be able to communicate with me at all times.
Yeah. And I feel the people that want their kids to have phones in school are idiots. But besides that, I think, and I was starting to tell you before that at my kids' school, they did kind of an experiment.
Okay.
Allowing the kids to use their phones
for actual schoolwork.
Okay. And like a tablet.
Mm-hmm.
And epic fail.
What happened? Did they spend more time?
Kids can't use
YouTube
they can't
TikTok.
Who knows what? They're probably texting their friends. They're doing whatever. If you have your phone out. Remember when we were kids, you had to write a note on a piece of paper and slide it across the desk. You so now the kids could just be sitting and texting. If the teacher, we're looking up, the square root of blah, 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 bullshit. You're texting the girl over there.
Yeah.
So, it stopped. They can't have their phones in class anymore. They have to park their phones in class.
Where are their phones in class?
Some classes have pockets that they all put their phones in.
Okay, yeah.
And some just you have to keep them put away.
Okay.
They still can use them at lunch, which I don't necessarily think is a great thing. Mm-hmm. and that goes more to
socialization.
Yeah, I mean, fuck. Kids sit next to each other and text each other.
No,
that's stupidity.
So, I love that you said that because my producer on my radio show is 26 years old, brilliant, has been a musician, his whole life. So something tells me he's more of the at lunch, I'm going to be listening to music kid. You know what I mean? And that was his only point of contention with not having phones. He was like, I think that they should be able to have them at lunch. He was like, what about the kids who sit by themselves anyway? And I said, read a book, do a Sudoku. I don't know. Try the New York Times crossword puzzle. Talk to somebody you don't know. I mean, I was joking when I said that, but I was like, decompress your brain a little bit, right? You're learning all day. Eat
socialize
your lunch,
a little bit.
Socialize. Then I had somebody who pointed out, because I made a joke when I was putting together this reel to have this conversation on the radio. I listed out some of the reasons why this particular school district wanted to do this. Obviously, they wanted children to be less distracted in class. If you don't know, There are kids watching whole YouTube videos, listening to playlists.
Mm-hmm.
They've got their AirPods in, you know what I'm saying? And they are completely disengaged from the classroom experience. To Lenny's point, you have other kids that are communicating back and forth. They're texting, they're on iMessage, they're on WhatsApp, whatever the case may be. There's a million different ways for them to communicate, sliding in DMs, you know. And somebody pointed out, I love when old people act like kids don't know how to talk to each other. They said this is the most empathetic, communicative generation, you know, of all time. And I said they're also the most depressed. They're the most anxious, you know, they're the most stressed out. So, I mean, hey, pick your poison, because a lot of people will correlate the stress, the anxiety, and the depression also to the cell phone.
I heard a funny stat the other day that I almost can't believe it's real.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the other hand, I can believe it's real, that the average age for a male losing his virginity in the United States is 31.
Where'd you find that statistic?
I'm telling you, it was on another podcast, and it goes to
that does not mean that it's factual.
But
all.
it would make sense.
Why would it make
because
sense,
of the anti-socialization that's going on. The kids that are getting...
But a 31-year-old right now was born in the 90s.
Yeah, I
so
feel you.
That doesn't really... No, I mean, if they were talking about Gen Zers not losing their virginity until they're 31, then maybe...
I feel you. I'm going to do a little research on that. That's a future episode.
But I would definitely like some actual clarification on that number.
The loss of socialization is tremendous. You mean you're allowing your kids to go into their own world, which they can't stay in forever.
Mm-hmm.
So if you raise your kids like they're in their own world, when they go to the real world, they're fucking shell-shocked.
Mm-hmm.
They're shell-shocked.
Yeah.
What do you mean I can't listen to my iPad? I can't listen to my playlist when I'm at work? 'Cause you're working.
Well, you know, and I love that you pointed that out, because, you know, being shell-shocked extends beyond just, you know, not being allowed to be on your phone. Some of the comments that were left on Instagram, and that, you know, people who called into my show, had me absolutely blown away. Like, one was, no, I need to reach my kids at all times with all the mass shootings and more. This isn't it. So my response back to this person was, well, they can still bring their phones to school. They just can't use them during the school day. I said, do you text your kids while they're in school? I said, I remember back in the day, if there was an emergency, parents would call the school, call the front office, and then they'd come get you from class.
Yeah.
They'd either paid you to come to the office, or they'd send, you know, send a kid who was on office duty to the classroom to get you and bring you to the office, and then the principal would relay whatever was going on. Or if it was really serious, your parent might be there waiting for you, like, hey, we need to go, grandma's in the hospital or whatever. Her response to that was, I definitely text my kids during school. Immediately. You gotta love social media. Somebody completely uninvolved jumps in. You should not be texting your kids while they're in class for any reason. During lunch, between periods is another thing, but distracting them during instructional time sounds pretty entitled to me. Somebody else says, exactly. Somebody else says, well, she then says, Julia, simmer down, stop assuming. And then somebody else says, oh, stop it, you're part of the problem. Put your kid's phone down. He doesn't need to call you all the time. There was a time when kids just went to school, didn't talk to their parents or anybody all day, and then came home at 3:30. And to top it off, it's no more dangerous out there than it was when we were kids. You just see everything now because everybody has a video camera. There were still kids getting raped and molested back then, and stolen and killed.
Everything.
Your kid having a cell phone does not fix other people's mental illnesses. And as you can see, it kept going.
Yeah. Nor does it protect your kid.
For sure. I just thought that was really an interesting conversation and very, you know, podcast worthy. Just the whole question of whether or not you should be, as a parent, reaching out to your child during the school day to say what? I don't understand. Like,
you know, it blows my mind that kids are, you know, always pointing out that how out of touch the previous generation is. That's one of my favorite things. Meanwhile, we had all the same kids in our school that they do in their school.
Mm-hmm.
It's
yeah, but Lenny, this isn't a kid. This is a parent.
No, I get that. Well, parents.
This is a parent who's in her 40s.
But
who is literally
we've talked a lot
texting her child.
on this podcast about the education system in this country. And then you have parents that complain about this, that, and the other, but yet they want to distract their kids from learning. It doesn't make sense.
But again, here's the thing though, where does that kind of parenting come from? Because
it's a helicopter mom.
No. Your wife is a bit of a helicopter mom. And I mean that I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, because I think she's an amazing mother. But like, she definitely has Find My iPhone on the kids, and she knows where they are and all of those things. But I could never imagine Rachel texting, unless it was an emergency situation, texting the kids in the middle of the day like, hey, what do you want for dinner?
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I'm saying? Because she values education. Plus, she knows how much you guys spend to send your kids to a private school. Like, no, you're there to learn. You're there to be engaged in whatever is happening in your classroom. You're there to be, with your friends, with your teammates. All of those things.
We're semi lucky that the school enforces the no cell phones in classes.
But do you think she would would you ever text your kids? Like, and I realize that I'm coming at you aggressively, so I apologize for that. But would you text your children in the middle of the day for no reason other than to say hello while they were in school?
Yes. And I'll tell you the only reason why.
Are you kidding me right now?
No, I'm going to tell you the only reason why, because I know they don't have their phones at important times. And they'll text me, or, are you picking up Joey, or I have practice after school? There's things, when things change, they text.
But you're the same guy. I want to hit you with a pillow. You're the same guy who thinks they shouldn't even have their phones.
I don't think they should.
Then why are you texting them in the middle of the day?
Because, like I just
Something
said,
that you could wait until literally they're out of class.
I know that they're not in class with their phone, for one. I know they're not, because the school doesn't allow it.
At the end of the school day, you literally just said that's after school to me. Before we started shooting this podcast, Lenny and I almost got into a fight over this exact conversation, and I can't believe your little hypocritical
I don't know. It's not about hypocritical. It's about you've pointed it out to me many times that my kids are lucky and privileged to go to private school. And with that, I have two amazing, honor roll students that,
what does that have? Why
if they
you
text
act like
me,
an honor roll student, and stop texting them while they're in class?
If they text me, hey, I have this after school, I'm going to respond, okay, but I know they're not in class doing that.
Okay, but my point is, that's not what I asked.
And I would be happy if they didn't have phones at school.
I'm talking about you texting them first, just randomly,
no, I don't know. I don't text them. I don't text them out in the middle of the day for random nothingness. Okay. That goes without saying. No, I don't text them. Hey, how's your day going?
I can totally see you sending them.
No.
You don't send them TikToks like you do me when I'm in the middle of a break on the radio trying to do my job.
You got your phone so turned off, it's not even funny.
Like, literally, I'm talking on the radio. He's listening to my radio show, and he's saying, hey, Kimmy B, we shooting today?
Well, whatever.
Never mind, you're a distractor.
So you shouldn't have your phone while you're on the radio.
I do every once in a while. I'll be like, he knows I'm on the air. What is he doing? Or I call people, I'll be like, why do people text you when they're literally hearing you talk on the oh my god, you're on the radio. Yeah, no shit. Well, whatever. Okay, so Len is a little bit of a hypocrite, but anyway.
A little bit.
So there was that one.
But I would support not having it.
Okay. So if they didn't have it, then obviously you wouldn't bother whatsoever because you would know that they wouldn't have it. This is clearly a person who wants to be able to communicate with her child at any moment of the day. Then there was another person, Len, and I think that you're going to take this in a different direction, because we were talking about real world. Her purpose or her reason behind wanting her children to always have their phones is because she was severely bullied when she was in school. And she apparently had a teacher that did nothing about it. And it was like unwanted touching. Somebody had cornered her in the back of the class and whatever, and the teachers did nothing. So she feels her child should have their phone and be able to communicate with her, at any given point in time during the day. And I ended up asking this person, I was like, so just to play devil's advocate, if your child was being bullied in the middle of the school day and text you, Mom, I'm being bullied right now. What are you going to do? Real life. Are you dropping everything? Are you telling your boss, listen, I need to go. My kid is being bullied, right? Are you showing up at the school and what? Confronting the bully? Are you having a conversation with the principal? Are you calling the teacher out of their classroom to address the situation and ask why they're not handling it properly? Is this more something where you'd be like, hey, honey, I love you. Hurt people. Like, are you just going to engage them in the conversation to be emotional support? Tell them we'll talk about this when school's out, or I'll pick you up today and we'll talk to your teacher. Like, I just, or is this something that, as a parent, you would be like,
suck it up, buttercup.
Well, and I think I might have even texted that in there. I know that they're going to
It's what it boils down to. I mean, first off, you're taking, and especially in today's day and age, bullying is so, who knows what it is today. Mm-hmm. I mean, it could be anything. They knocked my piece of paper on the floor. Mm-hmm. Okay, pick it up. Mm-hmm. Timmy, don't do that again. Today that's like they're pressing charges for assault. Mm-hmm. Which is so where do you take it? What is bullying? Well, I mean, didn't kids sit behind you in school and pull your hair?
No, I mean, I remember there was a boy. I went to a Christian school when I was younger, and it was like all grade levels, and it was a small school, so we were all kind of in the same classroom. And I had very hairy arms. I mean, hello, like I was a hairy little kid. He used to make fun of me for that. You know what I mean? I had a unibrow, whatever. Like, mm-hmm. So I was definitely.
Did you live through it?
1,000%. And I was a crier too. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I was an only child. I was, a little bit emotional, but I was very good on my own. Like, I was always very strong. Like, I didn't, I wasn't a needy friend. That wasn't the situation. But I definitely had kids. Kids are shitheads sometimes. Like, little kids can be horribly
That's
mean.
Their job.
I get that.
It's their job to season all the rest of the kids.
But there is a line that can be crossed if bullying gets physical. You know what I'm saying? Again, if there's unwanted touching. If it becomes that cyberbullying situation, which again, these aren't in school. There's a lot of things that can't be videotaped.
Well, I told you the story. I told you the story about the cyberbullying with the kid at my daughter's school. The kid came in and punched the other kid right in the face.
Oh, yeah. You did tell me that. Right? But
that was straight up cyberbullying. But again, when did words become so damaging? Who empowered?
Well, here's the thing, though. I'm not invalidating anybody's feelings. Mm-hmm. What I want to know, though, is when did parents start interjecting themselves into the affairs of tweens and teens? Like, we have seen adults on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, physically assaulting children who are bullying their child, right? Yeah. Getting onto school buses and grabbing kids by a backpack and pulling them off a bus. And that, to me, is mind-blowing in itself. We've also seen videos of kids, roaming and roving in packs like wild animals and jumping the loner or whatever. And that's not right either. And it gets recorded on a cell phone.
I was across the street the other day at CVS, standing out front, and these three obnoxious kids are just riding around, and this one kid is like riding his bicycle like he's gonna hit me, right? And I'm just thinking to myself, and I didn't bring myself to say it, but I was just gonna tell him, apparently nobody's ever knocked you the fuck out. And let me tell you, I would have smacked him off his bicycle. He was a 14-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. If you got the balls to go up to an adult like you're gonna hit him, expect to get smacked. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee you, if a cop showed up, I'd be like, the kid was riding into me on purpose, and I smacked him. The cop would let me know.
On tape somewhere too, by the way.
Yeah, but that's the. But
that's not what I'm not talking about. That I'm talking about you as a parent. Imagine Joey was getting picked on the school bus. Are you waiting outside that next day for the bus to come pick him up and then boarding the bus as a parent?
No, I'm whipping Joey's ass.
But that's and we know, and people who watch this podcast, with some sort of consistency, know that is in Lenny's character, whether you agree with it or not. But like to the parents that are saying with with relation to their kids having phones and access to phones and the reasons why they need to have their phones at all time, that it's because of bullying situations. Like,
Yeah, tell your teacher.
well, and so this parent's main issue was when she was bullied, the teacher didn't do anything about it. The teacher didn't care, and we've heard that. We've seen that in some of the comments.
And what
on
was
the
her
different,
bullying?
What?
What was
I
the
told you she
extent?
was the one that was like cornered. She was in the corner of a room apparently, like cornered, stuck, and was touched. I don't know if it was inappropriate. It was
Yeah, well, that's not
unwanted
right.
touching.
Yes, the teacher should have done something.
And there are some situations where it's the teacher who's doing the bullying. Like
Yes.
we've seen, the situation with the Muslim kids right here in Florida in the classroom that were praying, and the teacher stepped on their hands and said, "Not in my go back to your country." Or like that's fired. And as a parent, I might just show up and whoop the teacher's ass.
Yeah.
That's not another student though. That's a whole adult in a position of power and authority abusing it and mistreating children. That's a different conversation, right?
Yes.
And I realized that in some situations, phones have been helpful in schools, when it comes to reprimands and punishments for inappropriate behavior, because maybe a classmate has caught something on tape, whether it's a theft or an assault of another student or an assault of a teacher. But unfortunately, I think a lot of times the phone is the actual culprit.
Yeah.
In the situation, like the teacher, do you remember the teacher? I'm sorry to cut you off, Len. The teacher that just ended up in the hospital a couple months ago. I know I sent you the video. The young lady and the teacher got into a war of words over the phone. The teacher had her phone.
Mm-hmm.
The teacher went to leave to go to the office because the young lady was losing her mind. And the girl ended up beating the teacher's ass, broke her arm, broke her leg. The teacher ended up in the hospital. It was absolutely wild. And the classroom, I think we had a conversation about it on the podcast.
I'm sure the girl's parents are suing the school.
Well, but the teacher is suing the school district as well. But the classroom just sat there and recorded it. And we were talking about, I think back in the day, like, you didn't disrespect teachers like that either. Like, somebody would have told her to sit down, shut up, like, let it go. And at this point, it was just a free-for-all. It was absolutely crazy. But again, the point of contention, the catalyst to all of that, to this young lady possibly ending up with charges pressed against her, right? That can deter her entire academic career and future. This teacher ending up in the hospital was this thing. So if it's not in class,
it's crack.
Do you know what I mean? If it's not in
drugs.
class,
it's a drug.
That whole situation never happens.
Correct.
So it's like I don't know. There's so many different angles to look at it from, and even with the negative, mental health ramifications that we're seeing with phones, right? We're talking about how our kids are so overstimulated, right? Like they're in this thing 24/7. They get home at night, they shut the door. You think they're asleep.
They're in a shell. They're disappearing into a shell.
But I also think, but it's also a testament to that quote unquote, that crack, that addiction that comes from the social media and the likes and who's talking about me and who's doing what. But it's like, again, this thing has taken bullying to a different level, right? Because that embarrassing moment when maybe a young lady gets her period in class now ends up on somebody's social media. That moment when somebody's crying, or maybe the not so cool kid is getting pushed around, and now it goes from being one moment in time that maybe 5 or 10 people saw to it going viral. You know what I'm saying? And everybody seeing it. It's just it's not healthy for so many reasons, like the least of which is them not talking to each other. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I don't know if that's the least of which, because that's people skills they're going to need for the rest of their life.
It is. I mean, unless everybody just keeps working from home. But it was just interesting, like I said, to see how many people, felt so strongly one way or the other. And there wasn't a whole lot of, again, in between, which is the other thing we talk about often on this podcast. But again, somebody's like, yes, I'm all for this. It's too much of a distraction, and kids need to be focusing on their education with interacting with the teacher, not glued to their devices. Again, somebody said yes, but they still need to take them to school, put it away that after school they can have their phones again. I disagree. Phones should not be banned from schools. My children should be able to call or text me at any time. If, Lord forbid, there's an emergency, I need to have access to my children at all times because sadly, the world is not a safe place. Now, I do agree that phones shouldn't be allowed or even visible during class as it is a distraction, but the kids should be allowed to have them in their pockets on silent and during their breaks and lunch. I see no harm in that either. They want to control our children. You can't control strangers making their way into schools undetected. Absolutely not. I love that there were a lot of parents pointing out, like, remember when your parents used to just call the office? Like, you know what I'm saying? If your kid is sick, they don't need to avoid the school nurse and just call you to come pick them up. You know, there was a time when you used to have to go and tell the nurse you had a stomach ache or I don't feel good, and she'd take your temperature, be like, you're fine. You know, and half the time, why were you sick? Because you were being bullied.
I'm
because
curious
you were in
how
a fight with your friends. Because you hadn't studied for a test.
Yeah.
You know, and now you just text your parent, and the parents that are you know, hard in the paint want to be able to communicate with their kids at all times. They're coming to get you. They're snatching your happy ass right out. I don't good.
Yeah. Suck it up, Buttercup.
It's crazy.
Pussification of America.
I'm not gonna yeah, that's your thing, but I just, you know, and do you really think that the world is so much worse in 2023, or do you agree with the other person who commented and said we just see it all now? We just have
the world has always been a bad place.
To all the information.
It's always been a bad place. It's always been a bad place. There's always been, if anything, Kimmy, I would say it's safer now.
You know what I don't understand?
I would say it's safer now because the criminals or pedophiles or any of these people know that at any given moment they're on camera.
They don't.
And they're
being
watched.
From doing shit.
No, I mean they're crazy.
I tell a Florida man story.
They're crazies, but
day.
you know what I'm saying though. I mean, the whole thing that happened here in Hollywood with Adam Walsh. Nobody knew shit. Mm-hmm. Nobody, you know, nobody saw anything. Nobody knew nothing.
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't. I can't say that it deters people because there was just a situation. I want to say in Miami Gardens or maybe in Liberty City where a man tried to abduct a young girl and she bit him. I don't know if you saw that on the news. Mm-hmm. She literally just hard down bit his hand or whatever, and he dropped her and he ran. And it's the scariest thing to watch this whole situation unfold on Ring cameras from the neighborhood. And this was, I mean, it wasn't like it wasn't a gated community type of situation, mm-hmm. but clearly people, you know, are protecting their homes. And to watch him like lurking and stalking, and he was in a Range Rover, he was in a nice vehicle, and he mm-hmm. was really just trying to do like a snatch and grab and go. And luckily her mother had taught her, you fight until you can't fight anymore. Mm-hmm. And she was, you know, maybe I think, but somewhere between 4 and 6 years old, and just bit him, and he dropped her, and he ran and he got in the car, and thankfully, again, like Ring cameras and CCTV were able mm-hmm. to identify the vehicle, and they caught him, which is fantastic. But unfortunately, it's still not as much as a deterrent mm-hmm. as we would love. My only question is that, like, so you think that it's safer? The parents that are acting this way, though, are parents who are like my age, who grew up being able to do things, right? Like this is where I get to this place where I get very confused on how.
I think we have a lot of parents that are in their 20s and, you know, early 30s.
They're not raising teenagers though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe if you had a 20, I think that are no.
Yeah.
No, the people on my timeline are not in their 20s. They're 45 having these conversations. So these are people who grew up being able to ride their bike. Like my homeboy posted a meme the other day, and he said, "I don't think our parents realized just how far we went when we rode our bikes in the 80s." And I died because I was like, no shit, because we'd be gone all day. All day.
Yeah, I know.
But I grew up like that. I don't understand why parents don't allow their children to do those things.
Because the parents have been put in a perpetual state of fear because they see out of the 330 million people in this country and the 7 billion people in this world, everything bad that happens and nothing good.
But do you see, like, do you understand that, like, that's a little bit perplexing? Like, even to the woman, I understand that the woman who wants her kid, if her child is being bullied, right, she wants her child to be able to communicate with her immediately. Mm-hmm. Because she has personal experience with that, right? But having dealt with that personal experience, wouldn't you want to teach your child to advocate for themselves? If you know what happened to you, right? Like, wouldn't you say, listen to me? Like, this is what I want you to do. Not only are you going to call me, but I also want you to go to the teacher and I want you to demand to go to the principal and you're going to, you're going to document all of these things. Like, it just instead of empowering her child, it almost seems like she's trying to shelter and protect. And you can't, like you said, Len, these are things that are going to handicap you
in the real world.
Long run.
Yeah.
In the real world when you get out there, because what are you going to do the first time your boss says something, out of pocket to you? You're going to text your mom? Is she coming down to Morgan Stanley or whatever, Lehman, like, I don't even know if these places exist, but you know what I'm talking about, Bank of America, or is she coming down to the ManTFup? Like, I wish white boy Nick's
walking into Cheetah.
I wish white boy Nick would text his mom and have her come here if you said something crazy to him. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, he calls me white boy Nick, mom. Like, what would you do if somebody's mother came a knocking on this back door here?
Yeah, well,
Like, do you know what I'm saying, though? Like, and that's, you wonder why you have kids who are like, oh, you can't talk to me. And I get that we have to have boundaries, and I'm all for,
Listen, I've interviewed 100 of them. 100 of them.
Yeah.
You can't work here. You can't work here. Mm-hmm. It's that simple.
Like, my mom is an incredible mother, right? Like, amazing. And has always been my rock. But she, I think the greatest thing she ever did for me was she listened. She allows me, I think, and that's given me the ability to kind of work through some of my stuff. I think with just having a sounding board, right? Like, when you can talk it through, you realize this is not the end of the world, right? Like, somebody doesn't like you, you're fighting with this one, they're being mean, they ganged up on you. Like, that's shit that happens in girl squads all the time. Like, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Then you guys make up. Like, she used to laugh. She'd be like, oh, you're fighting. I thought you guys were in a fight. Well, can someone still sleep over? You know what I mean? Like, I thought you guys weren't you fighting yesterday? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's life as kids. And you have to learn to work through those things and to communicate and have tough conversations.
Listen,
and I'm
we
grateful
have it
for her for that.
We have it between Joey and Miranda all the time. We have to constantly tell them because they'll rip each other apart. To their friends, they'll rip the other one apart. And it's like, hello, that's your sister, that's your brother. What the fuck's the matter with you? And it's true. That's the nature of being a teenager and a pre-teenager. You have to find your own way.
But it's also like it teaches you resilience to some degree too. It's kind of like
thicken your skin.
And again, it's you have like, and you've probably been around it. I know I have. I have friends that are incredible at roasting each other. Incredible. It's culturally something that they just do. Like, you grow up with that from when you're little, and it becomes a skill. And they're so quick with the comebacks. You know what I mean? And if you're not, you will get annihilated. Like, don't step into the your mama jokes. Don't step into don't do it to yourself if you are not ready to bring the smoke, right? But it's funny because when you're around that, you learn to be self-deprecating, right? Like, I have a big head, so I can crack the big head joke. Like, you know what I mean? And it doesn't faze me if somebody else points it out. Like, I can talk about how hairy I was, right? Like, I mean, I can do those things. When you can own the things that you're most vulnerable about, when you can own the weakest parts of your character, your flaws, or things like that, that is it's like a superpower, right? Because then nobody really has anything on you. If you can laugh at the things that people are going to try to use against you, and roll with it, they have nothing.
Yeah, well, the kids nowadays cowl in the corner.
I know, but
you told me my arms are hairy.
Lenny, it's not their fault. They've got parents that are literally trying to come in and fight their battles for them. And I don't know if it's because they were bullied themselves and didn't have parents that were either there to listen to them or to encourage them to stand up for themselves or to show them their redeeming qualities. Like, that's the other thing too, Len. Like, as much as you're a suck it up buttercup kind of person, I know you also praise your children and the things that they're good at, right? Like, Joey's an incredible athlete. Miranda's just gifted all the way around. Nick is Nick. You know what I mean? Like, and he's got his own skill sets and things like that. And I know that as much as you ride them and you will joke with them and you'll press their buttons, When they need a pick me up, when they need the praise, when they need to know
Of
that you
course.
believe in them, you're there for them in that way. And I think that's the same thing with my mom. Like even when
Yeah,
I
but
was
I'm a
no,
pretty staunch suck it up, buttercup.
no, I know you are, but what I'm saying, yeah, but it doesn't sometimes it doesn't take a lot.
No.
It's not something that like for every time you say "suck it up, buttercup," you have to come behind with a positive. I'm not saying that, but sometimes it's just the knowing, like I'm not fucking shit, bro.
Hmm.
Like just having that little voice in the back of your head, like you know what I mean. That when your mom or your like that, just that belief in you or that one little thing, like yeah, but you do this better than anybody, bro. Like just having that, you never know when you're gonna lean on that one thing that's going to get you through. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? And I think that that's the other thing that my mother did. Like she was always able. She wasn't she wasn't a use your fit. She was never going to encourage me to fight anybody. That's not who she is. She's a very even keeled, and she's kind of more of a peace out. Like if somebody's fucking with her energy, she's gonna walk away. That's a little more difficult for me to do. I need to have this conversation. But I don't know. I just think that there's so many great ways to empower your kids without actually fighting their battles for them.
Yes, you have to teach them how to fight their own.
You do, but
If you don't, you're doing them a disservice.
But I think a lot of parents have forgotten that, and I feel like it's because they didn't have parents.
Which is
That
why we have what we have in society today. We have a weak generation. We have a weak generation that doesn't stand up for itself. That
But Lenny, there's
thinks
crossover though.
that words are detrimental because they can't get them out of their head. They're words. Kids nowadays don't understand. They're in control. Now, if somebody's hitting you, that's a different story. Hit them back. Whatever. But you know, the verbal abuse, turn it off. Walk away from it. Get it out. You know, I mean, it's just it it shocks me that kids are so distressed at such a young age nowadays. Very distressed, very anxious at this young age when they should just be relaxed.
But again, though, Lenny.
Oh yeah, no, it has to do with social media. It has
But
to do
it
with all that.
there's just there's no reprieve from it. There's no getting away from it. Like if you were the kid that was bullied and picked on and was called a loser at school, that was at school. You could come home and be, the mad scientist in your basement or whatever. You had your other little group of friends
Mhm.
or you just played your video games, but you could get away from it. You can't get away from it now. It's just like you make the one mistake at a party,
I'll tell you,
in high school and you get drunk and something happens and now there's videotape of it and there's
you couldn't get away with it when I was a kid either. This kid used to chase me home and beat my ass all the time when I was a kid. He was like 3 years, 4 years older
that's
than me.
one person though, but
Three.
imagine somebody videotaped
Oh, yeah.
that and sent it to the entire school.
Yeah.
Imagine that goes out on TikTok or on Snapchat and just gets shared across counties. Like there's no escaping the worst moments of your adolescence anymore. It's why there are now numerous documentaries about young girls who have taken their lives after, getting blackout drunk at a party and being sexually assaulted, having no idea what's happened, and instead of, the perpetrators of the crime being the ones who are, publicly shamed and mocked. It ends
Mhm.
up being the girl who's slut shamed all over social media. And again, there's just no way of escaping it. Even the young girls who were doing we've seen it with the Girls Gone Wild shit. The ones that are on spring break. Hey, you have one moment of craziness, right? Or you do a wet t-shirt contest, and the next thing you know, here you are as a teacher, and that's been taken off of a videotape and thrown up on a porn site, and it's so difficult to get it off. And I realize that we've now completely,
Skewed.
yeah, the trajectory. But
I'm glad it wasn't me this time.
But it all starts with this though. But it starts with a phone, and that's why it's like as much as I understand that they're tools and they're resources and that they bring value, right? And we love being able to communicate, and it's great to be able to track your children. I'm sure. Oh my goodness, some of the strict Portuguese parents in my area, would have loved to have been able to find my iPhone, their children, when we were in high school. And it is a blessing, I think, from a parenting perspective, as far as peace of mind goes, to be able to, follow
I
and
think,
know.
first of all, we have to embrace the the technology that we have now. We have to.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to teach your children, just like you taught them that the stove was hot and that, don't touch the pot on the top of the stove. Don't do this. Don't do that. You taught them all those things.
Yep.
Why can't you teach
But-
them that this right here is
Because
not
you're too busy texting them while they're in school.
exactly? So,
So-
whose fault is it?
But that's what I'm saying.
It's the
Like,
parents.
this is what's so crazy to me. But then they're the same people that will complain about kids. But these kids got it from somewhere. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And it's the same thing like when you go out to eat at a restaurant and you see the parents that just need a break. And I get that. But what do? They hand their children 3 iPads, 2 phones, and distract yourselves, right? There are 3-year-olds that are more savvy with an iPad than I am as an adult.
Yeah.
Like, they can navigate their way around that thing. They can update it for you. I'm like, you're a toddler.
When Nick was a kid, we used to all take turns walking him around.
Yeah.
So the other ones could eat.
Yep.
That's what she did.
Yeah.
Or you threw him a beating.
Or you read a book, or you brought a coloring book with you.
Yeah, whatever.
You did something
Yeah,
creative.
here's a crayon, draw on the walls. Yeah.
He really is a good dad, guys. I swear. But it makes me sad because it's like we can sit here and we can point fingers and place blame, but again, to that mom who was distraught over her child not being able to communicate with her if they were being bullied, her whole thing was, my children know when they should use their phone or not. So don't punish them because other people don't know how to raise their children properly. And, to that comment, I was like, well, some people might feel you're not raising your children properly by trying to insert yourself at every stumble or stutter along the way.
Listen, to all
to
you
save
moms,
them.
all you moms that are concerned about the phones in the school.
It's dads too. What are you talking
All you
about?
dads, all you parents that are concerned about the phones in the school. Why don't you be concerned about the curriculum and the things that your children are being taught and not what the privileges
Or not taught.
are. Or not taught. Yes, or not taught. Which goes both ways. Or instead of the privilege of them having a
Which
phone
goes
and
both
being able to go
ways.
on YouTube. Well, taught, not taught, same thing. It's the same thing. What they're being taught is not necessarily
Or what is being
Yeah.
omitted from curriculums.
Yeah. Or added. Both. Get involved in your kid's school. That's one of the biggest problems in this country. You're involved in your kid's school through social media instead of being involved in your kid's school through the fucking
or you're involved
PTA
when a teacher
or
takes their phone away.
Yeah.
Now you're mad because somebody took your child's property. You're involved when your kid is in an altercation and you get called down to the school and now you're mad, not realizing that the teacher has reached out to you 12 times for behavioral issues or whatever the case may be. So I definitely am there with you on that one. Being involved, I think if you were to talk to anybody who works in the public school system and even private school system, there's a lot of private schools where parents drop their kids off and think, hey, listen, I pay a lot of money for you to basically do this job for me, and then you also have parents who are highly, highly engaged, whether it's in private school or in public schools. But unfortunately, if you're not engaged, the likelihood of your child falling through the cracks is exacerbated. You know what I'm saying?
Knowing your kids' teachers, just, I would bet in public school, it's a very low percentage of parents that know their kids' high school teachers.
Well, you're talking about, high schools with a lot of students.
Doesn't matter. It's still, they have a meet your teacher day.
Yeah,
they have all that stuff. It's the parents that have to go and reach out and meet those teachers and get all their fucking emails and be in touch with them. I know we do it every fucking year, even through middle school, lower school. Every year we'd go to the thing.
You have some parents though that just can't take a day off of work. They can't do it, and
typically they're at night, evenings.
Evenings. Do you know how many parents work at night?
I feel you, Kimmy, but I'm just saying.
I'm not going to parent shame the people who cannot make it. And then you have other parents who will send a family relative. They'll send somebody. My mother wasn't there. I remember one year for mine. My grandmother.
I feel you. I'm just saying the percentage is probably low. I would bet out of the parents that could make it there, the percentage is low.
I think that it depends on what area your public school is in, Lenny.
Maybe.
I'm pretty sure if they're in Parkland, you have pretty high parent-teacher engagement at, some of those schools. And unfortunately, in other areas, maybe not so much. But again, different conversation for a different time. As far as Orange County goes,
Yay.
students, when they head back, will be in for a rude awakening in some cases. Like we said, the whole conversation today predicated upon.
I'm waiting for the clear backpack conversation.
We had the clear backpack conversation.
No, I mean to hit public for a school district to do it.
Oh yeah, because that they said they were going to do it in Broward and they backed off of it. Did you know that?
Pussies.
Yeah, they backed off. Yeah, but nobody was happy with it. It was crazy. People thought it wasn't enough. People thought it was too much. It wasn't going to do anything. That was, again, it's very difficult to find people that are like, hey, step in the right direction.
Yeah. How about a start? You will get nowhere unless you start.
And the other thing was somebody pointed out too with the phones. This is one comment that I wasn't even thinking of. They were like, they still have their watches.
Yeah, they have their
Apple Watches.
Apple Watches, yeah.
Why do we give children all of these things? And I shouldn't say that because I was a spoiled child, but it's like, my God, let them disconnect in some way, shape, or form. Like, does every 14-year-old need a $500 Apple Watch to go with their $1,000 iPhone? And then if they don't have it, right? Oh, that's a knockoff.
Good marketing.
It's wild. It's wild.
Good marketing.
They're not buying it for themselves. We're buying it for them. As adults, we're the ones going out. So this is all a problem we created. And then we sit here and we get mad and we bitch about it. Like, it's just funny to me. The people in the comments aren't the kids using their phones in schools. It's their parents. It's their uncles. It's their aunts. It's their teachers. It's their grandparents. And it's like, these kids are a product of you. So if you want to be mad at anybody, blame your damn selves.
Yeah.
No?
I'm with you.
Yeah.
They can blame their damn selves.
Says the man who texts his children while they're in school.
Listen, my kids have phones and watches, and they were, taught the differences and told, anything you put out on the internet is going to be there forever. Mm-hmm. It's going to be there forever. You can't get rid of it. There's nothing you can get rid of on the internet. Nothing.
Yeah, but what does that have to do with school?
It has to do with teaching.
That is very true, but
teaching children the benefits and the way to use this. If you're teaching your kid how to boil an egg, you're going to make sure they know not to get burned. It's the same thing. This is a dangerous thing.
You don't think your kids abuse their phones at all?
For what?
Just they're on them too much.
Yeah, I do occasionally.
Social media.
I do occasionally, and I intervene a lot with them when it comes to their phones and what they put on there and what they, how much they interact on them.
What time are they usually up until? I know that.
I don't know. Joey's in bed by 10 o'clock, and Miranda's maybe 11. So they don't stay up all night. Okay. They don't live on their phones. Mm-hmm. They don't. When they're with their friends or whatever, but. No, they don't stay up all night.
The other thing that I want to have a conversation about on the radio, and we'll wrap up this podcast, I do want to talk about that, though. Like, just implementing rules in the house. I think that we're getting to that place where it's like at 10 o'clock, everybody's phones in a bin, lock them up, you get it back in the morning. Yeah. Like, I know that there have been parents.
We had one of those little cages one time.
And I was like, okay, well, that's not it. But even for adults, parents need it too. There are just times when you need, like, I've started putting my phone on Do Not Disturb from 10 p.m. until 7 a.m. just because that was the automatic time that was set on there, even though my alarm goes off at 3:30 in the morning. So I can check my phone, obviously. But I have to say, it not lighting up every time an email comes through or every time a social media alert goes off has honestly helped me decompress a little bit, at least at night. And I'm like, I should have done that sooner, just because that light going on and off, you know what I mean, on your phone?
Yeah.
Like, you don't even realize that it, I swear your body is kind of just in tune to it, no matter where it is, because it's always somewhere, within, I don't want to say a hand's reach, or, it's usually pretty close. But, like, even just Do Not Disturb has been helpful for me, just with letting my brain turn off a little bit and not being tempted to go see what's happening on, Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And I'm an adult. So for kids who live and crave that kind of attention and communication and interaction with friends and even with people that they're not necessarily friends with, just trying to stay in the know.
That's what they're using to fulfill their life or to make their life uh, you know, to make them feel worth anything is social media, and that's a false thing to build your life on.
100%. But I also think that it's just like in a school play setting, even in work. I mean, a lot of us use our phones for work, but like, I don't know, like in here, do you allow phones during meetings?
Um, we're typically not on them; they're here. I mean,
Everybody's pretty engaged. I've been in a meeting in here, and
we,
everybody is.
yeah. I mean, I do occasionally throw stuff at White Boy Nick because he'll zone out.
But he's your social media guy, though.
Yeah. But he'll zone out, but we'll smack him back into place. But I mean, allowing them, we work on the phones.
Mm-hmm.
Angeli posts everything from the phones.
Yeah.
It's like, posting from your phone, a lot of what we do is easier from the phone than
Yeah.
it is from the computer. So, it's a tool that we use. Are people scrolling through social media while they're sitting in a meeting looking at other things? No.
Mm-hmm.
No. That's not, I mean, I do bust some people's balls who get on their phone and just lose a half hour, but they're not engaged here.
Yeah.
But, they'll occasionally in the warehouse or one of the
Well,
drivers will.
But to your point, these are all things that will impact you long term.
Oh, yeah.
And again, I understand that there are the people out there that are of the belief that the American public education system is or was created to do nothing but create factory workers, right? People who fell in line and did their job. But there's something to be said for learning the skill of focus and of committing to the task at hand, of being engaged, of paying attention,
Yeah.
of listening, right? Like that's a skill that it's like a lost art in 2023. Wouldn't you say? The actual ability to sit and engage in a conversation and listen. I guarantee you there are studies that have been done that would show people's level of engagement in a conversation and how long you actually have their attention for has dwindled greatly.
Oh, yeah.
As technology has increased.
Yeah, the attention span has gone way down.
It's even writing notes, though, Lenny. Like, think about it. Before, when you were in class, I mean, I could turn Siri on right now, and if there was a professor speaking, she'd take notes for me, right? Like, that just is what it is. That ability to sit and listen and write things down, for me, was invaluable. Yeah. When I went to go take an exam, I usually didn't have to read.
It's also fine motor,
But those are things that you hone. Those are developable skills, right? Those are things that you can work on and that you can hone, that you can make stronger, especially if you're lacking in an area, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, like I said, showing up to class is critical for somebody like me who can be a procrastinator, because so long as I was in class and taking notes, I could regurgitate almost anything that I had written down in a blue book for an exam. But had I been in class now, or if I was to go back to school where this is what we're doing, right? And I'm not listening and engaged, and I don't necessarily feel like doing the 300 pages of reading, I'm completely fucked. Even if I was in the classroom, because I was in my phone on Instagram commenting.
Yes. You have to listen.
Not like that, it's become such a part of our culture that you would have been dragged when I was in college for having your phone out. Like, that's why my phone still stays on silent, was because like professors would kick you out of a lecture hall if your phone went off, because phones were such a new thing, like en masse, that it was absolutely embarrassing and it was insulting to a professor.
It's still frowned upon in business.
Of course, I would hope so. But but in the school setting,
which is the real world, which is why kids are going to have such problems.
Yeah. But they go off everywhere. They go off in the movie theater. They go off at the theater.
Church.
Like, they go off in church. I mean, they go off. It's absolutely wild. But a big part of that, I think, starts in the schools. And if you're not teaching boundaries and not teaching kids a lot of things. So
hot. Don't touch it.
Clearly, we're here for no phones in schools. Your children can have them. Let us know your thoughts and views on this particular subject. Do you think that kids should be able to use their phones at any given point in the day when they're in school? If you're a parent and your child was being bullied and texted you that, I'm really interested to see how many people feel like the woman in my comments, that they want their child to not only be able to communicate that with them, but that they're going to immediately act upon that in some way, shape, or form. Like, I think that's a whole other podcast. I just think we need some more parents up in here to have that conversation, because I'm definitely interested. I know your take on it, but I would like to see how many people like would actively get involved in their child's
Maybe I could find a random parent to come on.
I mean, we know quite a few. We got parents. I'm interested to see where we're at, because I think that is another testament to the type of children that we are developing, and how that's going to impact them long term in the quote unquote real world. But with that being said, do you have any parting words for the good people of the ManTFup podcast?
Yeah, take your kids' phones away.
Says the man who texts his kids while they're in school.
Nope, it's a wrap.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well,
62 is in the can.
Look at that. Like, subscribe, share, follow. Please make sure you get involved in the conversations on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube, especially the shorts. We love your feedback. We love your commentary. Some of y'all be stressing me out for real. You know who you are. And we will have a couple of podcasts with some rebuttals and some clarifications on past episodes, because there's some great conversations happening on social media right now, Len, that we need to bring back up. But until then, thank you for watching the ManTFup podcast. We'll talk to you next time.
Peace.